messages of God and the energies.
Wow.
So when a person walked past, it would vibrate and things like that, the colors. So they had different,
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
they spoke messages to each other in that way. It was okay. But then when they were conquered and then taken over, they say for the Navajos, it was a period where they were taken from their land for 5 years and they were just stuck in New Mexico with nothing. And then when they went back to their place, it was all gone. Everything, the crops, everything was gone. So they had to make rugs to sell.
Okay.
And then making rugs to sell to tourists, business. And then, so then the guy was saying, why is this rug different? He says, because the guy is fighting with himself not to be for sale and to keep the magic. But the magic, once it's made for sale, then you kind of have images together that the white people wanted you to have, but they're not correct. You know, and they say, well, what do you mean not correct? And they say, if you showed a picture of Jesus making love to his mother, everybody would know that's not correct thing. You don't have to tell them. It's the reversal of, okay. So the Navajo would know immediately when someone sold, how much they sold out, how much they sold out for. And so they came, so then you see there were people who objected because the things that were made were not for sale. But they were coming from a different place. They didn't know about sale yet. They were a community, you know. But then entrepreneurial type people came in and they wanted them to make it to look that way that the people would buy it, you know. And so then you can see it.
Yeah.
You can see where the art was genuine and that the art then, in terms of being for sale, something happens in the translation. But this picture, Arja, that I saw here of the vagus nerve, explained the whole thing in one moment, where you see the brain talking to the body and to the organs, and you could just see it. And so it doesn't have to be literal. You can see spiritual, literal, everything comes together like this, that there's a conversation going on all the time. And that there are hidden conversations, deep conversations. But then just, even though we've known about the vagus nerve and studied, to see the picture, and then something else was happening simultaneously. So I don't know if Spiro likes that kind of imagery. What do you say?
What imagery?
What do you say, Spiro?
What's the imagery?
Well, the imagery is that you wanted to make a movie of...
Of what?
The imagery was the literalization of the feeling. So we can see it when the Navajo rugs are somehow thrown up in the air, where there was a tribal connection and it was a shared experience, and everyone understood what the rug meant or the blanket meant and how it was worn. And so there was a constant conversation going on, and even as people walked past each other or whatever, that was natural to them. But then as they were conquered and literalized, and then money became a thing when it never was a thing, then they had to sell to tourists, and they used the imageries that, and then they were told what images to make for the tourists to buy. And something that was a shared experience intuitively became literalized, where the object that was created became the real thing to most of the people who bought it. But there were a few people who had some sense of somehow the art couldn't have a motive of making a buck. Somehow that making a buck interfered with the art in some way to certain of these characters, because it brought in a whole influence that wasn't there before, and they're trying to contact original feelings where it wasn't spelled out legally by law or structure or whatever, but somehow they're reflections of things. Just like a crucifix would be a reflection of a common feeling in some cases. It may be bondage, but to some, the crucifix is immediately understood by some if you walk past it and you see it. a whole conversation is right in that one glance. So these people shared that, and I guess also people who shared a common feeling also shared a common glance, where a whole body of information was exchanged in a glance or a look or a hello. And I feel that that was very nice picture. Is that okay that I utilize that one?
The vagus nerve. Yeah, my
Well,
yoga
the vagus
teacher
nerve,
in
not as the
India,
vagus nerve, but
Baba Joyce would call
but
it the Sushumna,
I
Is
would
it-
say,
the vagus nerve.
I would say there's a whole language, a whole force, a whole energy going on that we attempt to know. To get a picture of it is then to say, hey, the body's talking to itself, the brain is, and I say, oh, I understand, that's what we understood and knew, but then you get a picture of it. Just a dopey picture, but the dopey picture says the thing that is happening in some way. And you don't differentiate between the literal, the spiritual, the magical, and that's normal. It's normal that you've got something like this happening and you're talking about politics when you should be exploring this very thing that's happening in your back. What's
The
more important?
J6 is happening on your back.
So
Looks like a
let me,
pain.
so let me say vagus nerve. Thank
But
you.
vagus nerve is vagaries and
Thank you for
vagrant.
being there. Thanks, bro. I had no knowledge of you. I thought you were natural. Now I'll have to talk a little bit different once I become aware that I've got this whole, I don't even have to call it spiritual, this whole weird thing happening. And then I went to the doctor yesterday and it was even weirder there.
Did you?
I had to give the doctor 2 books as a gift, and I gave him that Paker book and the Mel Brooks book together. I said they're contradictory books, but he liked it. He's going to Hawaii today, so he won't see me for 3 weeks. But there was a murky thing that was happening there because I have been in a kind of pain secretly for a few, maybe a month or so. But they were not able to detect it. They had to study it more. So in 3 weeks, I'll go back for that. But now I became aware of the vagus nerve again. Okay. And again, where you become aware of not haunted by or at the moment, but you see the body process working. And you see that you've instinctively tried to care for it by trying this or trying to that, as if you're caring for a baby or something. And I say, you are caring for a baby, in effect. And that's sometimes where you'll have intuition. But the thing that I was looking at in that picture of the vagus nerve and then seeing how many levels it's on. Then I say, Kai, you've been exploring then somehow a Shakti pot experience. Now, the premise of the Shakti pot experience that someone in a space themselves, and from what I remember with Muktananda and so on like that, that someone can go up there depending on the space you're in. If you just want to earn a better job or something like that, or be happy. But those guys who had devoted themselves to seeking and seeing or whatever, then the transmission was around the same thing. It was supposedly then, because you shared a feeling, then the transmission of the teacher like that, even if he wasn't teaching you, but in that moment, there was a communication that took place. And that somehow it altered the life from being a continuity to having deeper dimensions running through it that people, and when that was awakened, then a kind of intuition comes with it, which is considered dumb in a literal world because it's not interested in proof in the same way. It's more, the intuition is more a doorway of seeing.
Mm-hmm.
But so then we'll say, let me look at Spiro's face for a moment. He says, come on, the intuition is a dumb thing that's self-protective of the ego. Is it? And I said, yes. depending on what degree. Is it mean, let's invent Shakti pots so we can earn a buck? Let's go to America and sell them some mantras so that we can get $10 a mantra. They're in, and I say, well, it did come to that because people were broke, but it also normalized where there were 26 people in the room hanging around doing mantras and telling jokes and kidding around with the teacher in Central Park Hotel there, and traveling there. So it was hanging out that normalized the situation. That becomes part of the memory, because when you look back at it, the simplicity of hanging out with people from the Himalayas, a teacher, and you're going to learn some ancient script or something, and you're in Brooklyn, and this is happening, and yet you see the commonality of hanging out in the moment. And so the premise of Shaktipat, I don't know if it's different than a kiss. I don't know if it's different than a smack at times, but it is a transmission where for a moment, two beings become one. Now, whatever level of transmission that happens, as I say, two beings become one. It can be a smack, it can be a kiss, it can be, okay. And you see the different levels that each of these things are on. But for a moment, two beings are one. And in a moment, they share a concern for the other. That normalizes. And it is part, in fact, of our lives that has happened, that the kid can just jump on the couch and say hello immediately and do whatever. And so two beings become one in the moment. And everyone's eyes agree, a normalcy is taking place. And yet a remarkable thing is also taking place. If you try to explain it scientifically, it's still a few years away. How is it so easy for two bodies to just mesh in a moment and share a life or share a moment? What is that? They say, well, the vagus nerve does this, and does my vagus nerve recognize your vagus nerve? Also, if I wave at you, does my vagus nerve also wave at you? Can it be that there are other dimensions happening simultaneously while the literal one is happening? And that when you are exposed to it, to the everydayness of your vagus nerve, the everydayness of your living and dying, the everydayness of a life lived on many levels. I was reading that old people die faster when they're in debt. That was in the same paper as the vagus nerve. And that it may be the debt that makes them die in some way, that they wish to die. So it's weirder and weirder. What do you say, Spiro? What do you see in that? Are these components seeable? In other words, like it's the flux, and not flux as we know it. How would we know flux? If a vacuum cleaner hit my hair and it was flying like that, my hair would be in flux, right? Okay. So flux indicates some kind of movement.
Fluctuation, yeah.
And at the same time, it's a kind of movement that is discovered in the literal story. In other words, those who try to read say what the economy is saying today. So they see it's not just literally what is happening today with money, but it is in flux. And they're indicators of the flux. And their indicators are that it'll go up or down or this or that, or so they translate it. And once you indent yourself to that kind of study, you become a master of that expression, even though it's only one of many. So you study flux, and if you study a kind of the flux, how it entered into your life, it becomes a kind of seeing. And so then you enter into some organized enterprises with that capacity of seeing the thing in flux. while it's literally there and it's literally happening. Now, people are doing that normally anyway, if they're betting on something, if they're having a schedule and a time period in a moving world. It's amazing the brilliance of a normalcy. But once it's kind of revealed, you see that the life itself takes on a dimension of being an artwork, not so literalized, but it's multidimensional. And that once you have that perception, there's levels of integrity that come with seeing. And they say integrity is not spelled out in the situation until it's somehow violated and then you lost contact with the thing. And I say, well, it's the balancing act between somehow needing money to be in the story and yet somehow not being a slave to pursuing it or being sneaky about it or doing all this trip that somehow becomes part of your life expression or flow. And so that was always the premise of a creative life, is that somehow a byproduct of the life would be that there would be a flow so that you can devote yourself to, and that's a dream. The premise of the dream in the society is that you become wealthy. I feel that the premise of the dream is that you wake up in one moment and you see it's happening already. From the perspective, meaning that once you kind of see the life from the creative perspective and re-enter the story, then you understand the pursuit of money. On one level, it's really lame. Unless you want to kid around with it, you can make a naive joke out of it or something like that. But somehow, I may allow myself a treatment like I did, where they do all this, and I make a joke about it, okay, to allow myself to do what they think is natural, okay. But I want to find out something. I want to see if my sense of something and the inner picture of it is balancing out. When I'm talking and kidding around with Urger about buying a year, I'm actually feeling like I'm doing that. And so I'm getting the permission of the body to some degree, not to just theorize what it should do or what it shouldn't do, but that it's kind of on board. So to me, it's pretty much very deeply and a creative act. Of course, it literalizes. When you get paid enough, it literalizes. When the bill is due, okay. So that balancing act that happens in the brain normally is revealed.
Yeah.
And when it's revealed, it is no longer a literal act in the same way. I think it's a creative act. Then I say, how do you earn a living, Spiro? What was the name of the job that you had there? Okay. What was that you were doing, Eric? What was the job that you had? Urja,
Which job?
you work in the fields over there, the coal mines, right? Okay. Meaning what? That somehow our job has been our life. And if you had to explain what was, yeah, they'd say, well, I don't know how to explain. Can I explain this whole weird movie that I've lived? But you understand that an employer will not take the weird movie. Wants to know what school you went to, what literal thing, what happened. You're literally that. And yet, you know, secretly, those descriptions of you are not literally you. This schmo here is literally me. I have to give descriptions, white, this and that, to this weird thing that I've experienced. And when I go to the doctor's there and he comes out and the other people, and Mary's there, it's the kind of movie that I'm in, where I actually experienced that, where I then put on, okay, you want to try this? Let's do that. And we're talking. He's going to Hawaii. Oh, it's nice there. Maybe you'll meet Wells there. He was going to Maui. Okay. All this while he's going to do this tube inside of me and around me like that. Okay. And it's normalized. But what is normalized to me is the movie of it. And so when you say, Danny, are you up for it? I say, it's like a role that I'm going to play in the movie or something like that, where you need to have the experience or something, the literalization of a process that if I didn't go to the doctor for 4 years, am I avoiding it? Would you say that? Would you say that I'm avoiding then? Probably, right? The old bastard's avoiding going to the doctor.
Oh, not the old bastard.
Somehow, yeah. Would you say that, Spiro? Somehow the old mother jumper doesn't want to go to the doctor or something. Even the doctors offered to come over. Hang out. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. We now have a guy who will, who's now a friendly, they're part of a friendship of families and stuff like that, who will come over. And I think I heard that he may start to do end of life care or something in some way, you know, but he's a pretty good doctor. He's working in the emergency room still. And in fact, in these conversations with him, this is a similar thing that he has. He sees so many bodies, sees so many dying. He's got 3 kids. They try to have a good life so that he can get away at times. So they will go to Hawaii also for a week or 2 with the family, and but they are deep into family. But the guy on a daily basis faces a horror show, and not only a horror show, but people yelling at you for caring for them or whatever, where you've always got someone waiting. So you see it from their perspective that they're kind of being assaulted in some way when you're with the doctors and the nurses. They say, "Holy shit, you got 50 people out there already." So I just coughed on. Just to show off dying and living.
You okay, Danny?
Yeah, I just had a weird thing where the lemonade came back up.
Oh,
Okay.
do you want to take a minute?
Okay. What do you say? Is that evidence of dying and living? A stupid little thing like that. This little lemonade made for me may just catch me in my throat like that. Would you run in, Spiro? If I was saying, "Oh, I'll catch you later, man."
But you want me to watch you on the screen rather than run in?
No, then I would say, "Yeah, watch me on the screen."
Let me get a better angle. No, Mary's closer.
Okay. So isn't it good that we can goof around with it? And yet actually like that picture of the
Vegas nerve.
like the picture of the Vegas, can we also see dying and living not only as threats or whatever, but in fact a balancing act that is happening in different versions, different aspects of it throughout time with every form. You can see revelations of it in mathematics and physics and approaches to that where you see simultaneity. And when you become a student of the forces, you start to see the forces more than the literalness. The literalness, I read an article the other day. Did you see that I think they treated 100 people for cancer, and they tried this new thing on them and they all recovered. No one expected it to work at all.
Wow.
So they were still amazed by it. They don't know. But that all the people in the trial recovered completely.
Wow.
No cancer in them. So it does seem to me up in the air and logical. All these elements are happening simultaneously. But the premise that I'm saying is then when in fact you see the literal world is not your world in that way, the literal world of being money-oriented, survival-oriented, things, relationship structures coming out of that sentiment. And yet there's something in you that once it literalizes like that, you lose a feeling. So let's say you've had a relationship with a feeling, and the feeling normalizes in situations, but it's a relationship with a feeling that you've had, and it manifests. And then there's a manifestation where there is a dance or a dialogue of community around the feeling. And it normalizes. But what is it? What is happening? They're still figuring it out. But you can then have elements where you are figuring it out while you're living it. There's intuition when something is shifted. There's an argument that reflects something. So you see this artwork then where it is and it isn't simultaneously. And yet you live in a world that it is no matter what. That the isness is the reality. And yet some of us may live in a world where no, the underlying element that gave it isness is our reality, not the literal reality that comes out of it. And that means what? It means that no matter what contract I've signed, because I can't read the print anyway so easily, and they had me signing all kinds of things yesterday. Okay. I cannot be a slave when it's revealed. You understand? In some ways, no matter what contract I sign, you may have a challenge with the contract, the literalness of it. Find a way to pay it, this and that. But somehow your freedom, not literal freedom like you have to break out of jail, but the normalcy of your freedom. To not be bullshitted into something that's a creative act between people. I'm renting a place for you, you're renting it back to me. There's an agreement. When you literalize the agreement more and more around that, and it's in fine print, and it's okay. And then I meet the fine print, like those old people meet the bill, that they get $300,000 bill or something like that, and it ruins their life. And it's normal. And it ain't. Because you see what immediately happened is not only the person's comfort is interrupted, but the person's sense of being able to live and be without stressed out and being captured in a circumstance. And you see the system captures you. And the system becomes the reality. And then what to do about the system becomes the conversation. That the doer then has you in a world of doing. When you kind of understand that we intuit that there's another hidden world in the world of doing. And that it's a controlling world in some way. And you try to literalize what it is. It's the Jews, the 1%, it's the Nazis, it's the, and you do have characters that play it out, but you see a literalization of a circumstance where only a few people know what is going on really, and the rest of the population is in a weird state. And knowing means sort of looking out from the balcony of your high tower and seeing the traffic and seeing everything go past, but you see something they can't see. And because of that, you are literally removed from it. You no longer have feelings for it. They're just objects to better your private world. And so those who are in that circumstance start to have experiences like that, where it's not human, where you're perceived as if you don't exist in some way, or you're looked at as a 40-hour week. Okay, and you say, do you think you could do a 40-hour week, Spiro? I think I could do a 40-hour week, yeah.
If we're into it,
I've done it.
it would be exhausting.
Yes.
Well, it would be exhausting to read palms as a job, wouldn't it? Okay, you got
it'd be
10 palms,
fun.
you got 10 palms, you got 5 minutes, 10 palms. Okay, oh, watch out, don't fall down, don't do this. Okay,
Be
so
fun.
you would have to give advice if you read palms in 10 minutes, 5 palms, no? 2 minutes a palm. So anytime it becomes a job, and it is, that's like the Navajo blankets where they reflected a kind of spirit that ran through the story that allowed them to communicate. and was part of their memory and stuff like that. And then when it was for sale and more the public that wanted a certain style or look, they then had to struggle within themselves because there were mixed motives, there were mixed messages. So what I was reading, in other words, one figure represented the night and it represented, they had to keep on not trying to represent God. So they keep on creating their own images that looked a little bit like God, like black man was really night, meant night. And, but that somehow they kept on trying not to sell out because the reversal of the imageries was certain. When others saw them, they saw it like a pain. They got hurt by seeing it or something. They saw their life being traded away or faded away. So just hearing a historical movement of life and circumstance, and you see the nature of it in nature itself and our own circumstance, and you see these flows running through it. And to some degree, you see that we've been living in the flow. And that to a large degree, much of our expression is still not so organized out of fear. Although we're surrounded by fear mongering and fear literalization. And the fear is always of what will happen by seeing what is happening. And presuming is what is happening will continue as into what will happen, that there will be a literalization of this moment into that. And that it will come knocking on your door one day and ask you who you are. And you'll find out that you're the wrong kind of person. Would that be tough, Spiro? To have people who know who the right people are knock on your door?
Well, it's speculative at best.
Well,
Whoever it is, it depends on what their motive is in the Danny sense.
In the Danny sense, the motive is what? Once one has a kind of power, then that power sees the world from that perspective. So now I feel Sting on Main Man is back. So let's say once you have a crop going, you want to keep it away from those mother jumpers, whatever those mother jumpers are out there. So you take, it's your crop, right? And
Berries.
Protective. And we see a crop of berries or berries.
Cherries.
Or
Cherries.
cherry. Cherry is a berry, sort of. At least they rhyme.
What do you say, Barry?
Berry.
No, Barry. Or maybe his speaker doesn't work. Is that it, Spiro?
I'm not sure. Sting.
They told me
Yeah.
that someone stole his speaker.
Yeah.
Okay, what were we discussing before? Well, we went from the vagus nerve, but seeing the vagus nerve again in a way where you see the brain talking to the body, talking to the organ, that you get it in some way. Even though you may have studied just the thing itself, there's a moment where it's not a medical thing, but you see you. And you see vagus nerve in you, and you see it talking, you feel it. I've been doing some of the exercises like that, where somehow the body language to itself is not different than the mental language conversation. And I think in that, what we call intuition is in fact another dimension of the experience that is not coming from doing and the literalization of ownership of the life or the person. So I think the intuition is pretty close to seeing it from the camera's perspective into the story, not the ownership of the story or the literalness. So I feel that Kai, you may get caught in imagery and doing Shaktipat, and it may trip out and literalize, but at the same
I'm unclear about what brought this conversation about Shaktipat up? Was it something Spiro was discussing about my work?
You know, I have no clue what anyone is doing. I know us through here, and they're always welcome in our life. Okay. So basically, but I feel everyone is taking the sentiment and expressing it. So did he bring up, he didn't bring up Shaktipat. I know Shaktipat.
Okay.
I think he brought up your website or something, or your site, or I don't know.
I only said that I saw it. That's all.
Hmm?
I'm open to discussing it. I'm just a little unclear.
No, that's, but he introduced that to me then, that, you know, that you're caring or healing people, or you have something. I don't want to literalize it because I see you, then I see what you would try to do and how you would express yourself. So I do feel that you're working with elements that others may be too hip for. You would be too hip for that, what you say, Spiro. In other words, when I'm kidding around with Urja and I say, okay, if you need to earn $1, you have to do 5 readings in 5 minutes. Then you say, I don't want to do 5. Why? I say, because I would take away the authenticity of the readings by needing to earn money. So you see that struggle. That one is attempting to keep the authenticity of the actions because it becomes personal or friendship in some way. And even if it's instant friendship, where it's not so much history oriented or historically oriented, but it may be a shared moment on a bench that becomes friendship when you walk past each other or whatever, where you share a dialogue that's not literally in the regular world that you're in. Then I see that you are experiencing normally Shaktipat running through the store. When there's friendship, when you do a favor, when there's a lookout, when the lives merge in some way, even for a moment, I think you get a glimpse. So different cultures then had a different relationship to an energy spirit. Now, I presume that every one of you will have a life and have an expression and find a way to keep it together. And I feel everyone that I know has found a way to express themselves. Is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, I feel that what I present in the world is the very essence of my soul. I don't feel like it's selling out. It's what comes from me at the deepest state of my beingness. I don't. So I guess, yeah, I get a little reactionary if it's like a sellout or a cheesy or something, because it's what comes when I purely surrender to the divine.
Well, if you sold out, you should have at least 2.5 million stashed.
I don't.
You know? So you mean you sold out and you're broke? What the hell kind of shit is that, man? That's even better. That I tried to sell out. I remember there was a show. I think it was Pete and Peel and these 2 black actors, and they did a skit where they were going to be sold into slavery, and they were pissed off to be slaves, and then nobody bid on them. And then they were pissed off that nobody bid on them. Okay, you understand? Okay, so the whole idea of the thing is I'm saying that each of us have created an expression. So teaching yoga is really friendship that you've been teaching with the yoga. Hidden in the yoga is an intimacy. And so it's friends that you're teaching. And so what is the nature of friendship? Can it be located? Can you find it? Is it intellectualized? So it would be considered to be naive when naive is an energy. If something was lost or literalized, then naive was something else, that you're supposed to think of your survival as the main ingredient. So naive means, to some degree, that your survival is not the main object in the life, to some degree, that there's some elements that need to be lived in a way. You can't live as a slave. You don't even know it, but your body may know it, your being may know it. And if you recognize that one cannot live, or as I mentioned before, where you sign the contract, but the contract violates a kind of humanity. Something may happen when you're thinking about it, may come from a different place, and you see that the law can't do it, it's signed, and so one's humanity is kind of imprisoned in a circumstance. And you experience it. You don't experience the death or the trial, you experience a suffocation of your humanity. So let's say some of us have had an experience of that feeling, and we've each made an expression of it. To me, I feel that as long as it's coming from, in our interaction, that it's coming from an honest place. An honest place doesn't mean George Washington honest. It means honest in the spiritual world, honest in the creative world. Where somehow you see the balancing act. So my whole relationship is to illuminate the story and be illuminated by the story. I'm not so illuminated by literally being told what folks are doing, because I feel the sentiment shared is what folks are doing. They're bringing that feeling into what they're doing. It's their call. What do you say, Spirit?
It's entirely a work of art, as you say.
Look, let's normalize the glasses and the beard. So Spiro is wondering about Shaktipat. Do you want to wonder about what?
No.
What are you doing?
I'm being accused of something.
No, you're not.
Never...
No, we're accusing you so that we can have this kind of conversation. I don't get too. This is really nice conversation, Khan, because it's something that we all are normal about or whatever. And I'm saying, for me, your expression, each person's expression is theirs. There's a common sentiment that we feel. But then I find out that somehow through the computerization and technology and situations, people know each other. Do you know Spiro before, don't you?
Not before this. No.
Not before this?
Oh,
No. But then I guess
No.
you're a computer guy, so you may find out and go out and hit everything. Huh? Yeah. But is that okay? How are you, Kai? You still okay with it, or you feel that there's a critique? That exploration.
No, I'm just trying to look. I mean, I just always pray that I can see the truth that's being shown and without being reactionary.
Okay. So the reactionary is, I feel, however dumb I am, that the showing of the vagus nerve was Shaktipat. Because I knew about it all and I knew everything, but this picture changed the perspective. All of a sudden I experienced my back, and I experienced my body just with this dopey picture. So I see Shaktipat is that when you know something, it gets in the way of you seeing something. So then we know these guys, they know now. So they can whip out, well, Shiva said this and Jesus said that, and they got this thing. But then what they talk about is holy. The creative act is that you may care for others in it, but then you'll run into a similar challenge at home when you retire because you've taken on something. Okay. And so then they say, is that a challenge that an Einstein goes home and he's a lonely guy at home, but he's a brilliant guy when he goes out there, but he goes home and he's hurt, alone. The whole spectrum of humanity pushed into him is not missed, even though he knows what the world is made of and what it looks like. And from what we saw of Jesus, that was also running through the story. Yet it's blessed. And then in retrospect, when you've died to the literal life in some way, where there is dying before dying, you see the experience that you went through. So then I think when we meet around the energy. Then we meet around the different expressions. I don't think any of these expressions, but I can see why each of your backgrounds or whatever would have an expression as I met you, and each of you are expressing yourselves in that way. But when I looked at that picture, I say, look, the Shakti pot is a fact of it, but in fact, it was made ceremonial. And that was my resistance when it was made ceremonial, but it was made ceremonial to reveal an energy. And that the people who shared the privacy in the back room with each other understood that the shared space would affect people differently. Just like a kiss would affect people differently, where some would be touched, some would be, and some would fall in love, and some would, so there are different levels of the same act, perceived. And so Shaktipat was to help, and it could be, oh, okay, take care, brother, or whatever. And it can be, but then it can be transmissions of feelings. Now I feel that those feelings are common everyday feelings that are revealed. Where you can say, take it easy, brother, take it, you need this or that, and look out for another, and it's normal. I'm feeling that those are elements of a Shaktipat running through the story. What I could resist is if the Shaktipat literalizes. And again becomes, you see that the world traps you into for sale.
Is it okay to have money in exchange for spiritual services? I think that's the base of it's being discussed.
Yeah, no, I feel that is the, well, what do you say, Spirit? He says, okay, because he's receiving money for spiritual services. So he's one of the good guys on, he says, yay. What do you say, Derek? Yay or nay?
I mean, that's a hard one for me, because it seems like what we're doing anyway is already spiritual. So to package it as spiritual and then sell it seems, I don't know.
Selling it is different.
But how is that different than teaching music lessons and receiving money?
Okay, so you
yeah.
feel, so now, okay.
Because I feel like there's
We live in a capitalist society, so you have to, interact
Okay,
with capital.
And so all you guys, and also should we say Sting up there, but capitalist society is not having Bitcoin to stash or anything like that. So
No, Sting's a big capitalist.
So then I say,
I mean, he's at war with his heart and his capital.
Oh,
I'd say-
I am zero, no.
no, we're gonna hold Sting, whatever the shit, no, whatever the trips, all of you guys, we're all holding you to purity energy, not purity schmo or dope, but no trip. The life has given you an expression. You're the moderator. If we run into each other and it's too much, then we may say, oh, so that advice may be good creatively. Do you understand from perspective? It's not a critique, it's your call. But it's recognized that if you're working with the energy, then it's an artwork, not an ownership. So you will, when you are using the artwork to meet people deeply, past where they want to be known, and in fact, they're eager to be seen when most of them are hiding a life, then you are sharing something deeply. Without making woo-woo and all the outfit, it is woo-woo and all the outfits. It has an element of integrity to it. Means that it gives you a kind of different life if you're pure in relationship to it. Now, pure doesn't mean this and that. And they say, what to make a buck? When I say, if you're a guy from New Jersey, you want to make a buck, you need at least 2.5 million stash before you can talk shit, because you're always going to be worried about the rent and the job and the girlfriend and this. Okay. So what to do? Get somebody famous to come your way, throw some dough, get this. But then what happens is that not only do you have a stash, but you want more, mother jumper. That's the addiction. That went from getting high to getting addicted, and then literalized that the addiction is the fact. So the money captures you. For us, money allows a freedom of flow. When it has you on the phone all day and this and that and got you up the culo in your brain, got you by your nose, then you understand the addiction that captures the story. One is being set up into a literalization when their life has been more of a movie than a literal life. So our way of making money was making money like a guy in a movie made money. You knew it was a movie when you were watching it. He really wasn't making money. He was adopting the character of a guy who would be making money. So we see the theater. We enter into
Everyone
the
here
theater.
has a movie of their life. That's pretty weird.
Well, you discover the movie of your life. You think it's literally you, but you think it's normal to have made a life of yoga. Your parents.
I mean, I think everyone here has had a strange life.
Okay, but none of it predictable. If they would have said to Urja's parents, she's going to be in Boulder, Colorado when she's 82 years old. Okay.
My mother thought I would become a bag lady, so
A bag lady. Okay.
That's nice.
my kind of thinking.
Luckily, my mother came here to die, so that was almost lost it all when they went bonkers. But there was a thing of beauty at the end and clarity. So it seemed to me that it was my mom, but it was a different thing. It was no. So the story is kind of different when you see it. When you no longer see it as dominated by the survival sense and your actions coming out of the survival sense, then you see that your life has actually been creative. When you discover that, you enter into a creative process that's happening anyway. But I still feel that we've been the Uber driver of our existence. That's why I say the discovery of dimensions within yourself open up an aha moment where my relationship to Kai is more of an intuitive one. And I don't see, even though there may be contradictions literally of vaccinations, no vaccination, to me, that's not that literally contradictory. Surety is that I would have had the mañana sense also of tomorrow, even with this doctor thing, 3 weeks, okay, I'll see you in 3 weeks. Thank goodness, even though it was heavy. So my sense of the mañana, it may be done, but mañana means that you're processing. You're processing your relationship to the literal world. So even now, as the love affairs come into our life, or the friendships come into our life, how they come into life, whether they're free to have the experience, a shared experience, or that they're historically determined, and to what degree can you act like a historical dude and talk, okay. So then I say I can put on an act for a moment, go to a party and put on a costume and do a thing, but you're not literally in the story. Somehow you represent an energy. If there's an attraction to you, it's not an attraction to you literally, it's an attraction to an energy that you're kind of representing. That you may even be unaware yourself, but when someone is intimate with you and that may reveal that dimension, that becomes holy. And I say not in that other sense where it's structured. The difference between a religious feeling and a religion is that it's not co-opted by the psyche or not owned. It's experienced. And I feel then that the different expressions that we may employ will be an introduction to the experience. Are they correct? Are they literal? I feel the people I'm meeting here are okay. I think they're sweethearts. So give it a shot what you're doing. Is that okay, that feeling, Kai? That everyone will have
I was okay with it, everything until this conversation started. Now I'm feeling, it's always been an interesting, complex subject for me, money. It's a very tough subject. And so I come to peace with it. I feel okay with it until someone confronts me about it. And then I start getting wishy-washy about it again. But then I say, well.
But understand what wishy-washy is. Others are not wishy-washy. Like he just said, this guy invests in crypto. He's not wishy-washy. He wants to make money. So basically, most of us, he would consider really dopey, and because most of us aren't that. And I say, you're wishy-washy because
I
you
want to allow
understand.
money to flow. I don't have an obsession with money. I want to be free to live in this world in a beautiful, divine way.
Hello. What you're saying is, can you sell your ass out for $1 and still be there with the energy? So
Well,
do
that's
I
what
want to
I'm
know
asking, is doing my
okay.
work for money
So
selling out.
then we are distinguishing that. So then you understand why it's wishy-washy about the money. It's not wishy-washy. The feelings of give and take is real, because somehow the money must be as a kind of gift or sharing, and not so much a literal payment or whatever. So somehow in the shared life, one introduces oneself where money is not the main dominator, because we're not literal workers that way any longer. Money is more a creative act. It's not a job that you're doing and this and that. So when you are concerned, you're concerned because you understand creatively something is happening and money is involved. So somehow having money for us, or making money, is freedom from the world of money and the literalization of it. And so I think that you've attempted to find ways of doing that, and you may have been punished because you didn't literally make a job out of it and seek to make $1 and grab whenever you can. And you had moments. So the back and forth with money, I don't feel is wrong. I feel that the challenge of that is creatively, just as those people said, they were challenged in their life where they were living a kind of free life, and yet the literalization of needing to have $1 or this or that coming in, that's a delicate challenge. When it literalizes, I think you've lost the connection to the soulful.
So can you,
You could take that as bullshit or realize, but I think when you literalized it for $1,
can you,
and the Chinese trapped you into their world.
can you energetically kind of describe literalize? So I can understand on an energetic level.
Probably for this thing, I would say probably Jordan Peterson would be a literalization of the circumstance. Or when I see the doctor and he looks at the thing and the cancer is a literal thing that's happening to you. That can be this, that. But when you are home with it, the cancer is not only that thing that's happening, but it's in your world, it's in your life, it's in your figuring, it's in this and that. So you see the doctor's world of treatment is one thing, or looking at, but then the living with a mystery that is now revealed. And you then say, aha, I remember this last year when that was there. And you start to see it was there all along. And it was just revealed. And so when it's revealed, you find out a world that has been there all along. The energy has given you a life.
Yeah.
You've added your own circumstance on it. Sometimes it'll be dopey and sometimes it'll have beauty in it. And so sometimes the friendships that you have will let you know, because somehow you're still looking out for the kids. You haven't sold out in one way. That's what I mean. Somehow you are doing it anyway. You're measuring how far you can be with something and keep the human element in it. And you're teaching that also by being in it in your own walk. And I think that most of us, we're teaching the dying experience by being in the dying experience, where it's not literal. It's our everydayness. But it's something revealed. It's not, but it's revealed. And when it's revealed, the revelation, you enter into the picture from a different perspective, where death is not your enemy, because it's no longer literalized that way. You see dying and living is normal. And you see the body, everything has been having this conversation that you now join in. And it's not so much dominated by doing. You see that there's integrity in your expression. There will be a creative expression for you. So our naive premise is that the truth of what you're sharing and teaching will provide the flow. To some degree, that's happened for you.
without putting a price on it?
That's your call. Now, you could put an impossible price on it. They say, okay, for an hour with you at 250,000.
I do have prices for what I do.
No, but if you charge 250,000, I think you're okay to do that from heaven. Heaven says it's okay. Because no one will pay it except an angel or something.
I've been working with this for years and years, Danny. I even do a live show on this every week on money and mysticism. It's something I really deeply am trying to comprehend. As of yet, just doing my work without saying I would like an exchange of money hasn't produced.
This doctor that comes out to the house, and this doctor who works in the emergency room, and the doctor who comes out to the house, he may charge you depending on what it is and what you're able to do. And there's an honesty in the conversation. Even though you know he's a high-powered doctor or whatever, there's no literal payment as much as there's an agreement of friendship, and then out of the friendship, the money comes. And there is, it's not overcharged, it's not undercharged, it's not this or that. If you don't have it, it's okay, maybe next week. Or you'd like that human conversation, as dopey as it is.
Yeah.
Where the relationship is the element, and then there is the circumstance. And you say, so it's not a job any longer. Then it's not putting strain on you that you have it today, or you're actually sharing an intimacy with them. So I feel that you enter into a situation where you don't have a stash.
No.
Probably creatively, stash meaning what?
I would like to have a nice, big, beautiful home for my kids so they can have their own room and places to create. I mean, right now my living room is my daughter's art studio. It's just not working.
So it's not, the not workingness is part of the creative act. The not workingness is forcing a shift. Now, you would like the shift not to come out of a gun to your head, but somehow for the last, you have been taking care of your kids as basic premise of what you are. Your presence is what you've been doing. So you have been the energy, and sometimes there's an argument, sometimes there's not, sometimes there's agreement, but there's a feeling shared, and you've been sharing that. As you start to see events happen, the events are then forcing, and the money event, usually when it happens here, when it becomes critical mass, then you see the critical mass is really because something else is happening. And the money question is disguised in that. It needs an honest conversation. Hey, baby, are we still into this?
But
Then
it would
we'll
still be there even if Rod didn't exist. The money question would
No,
still be
but
there.
if there is but that's the structure you set up. Your setup has impermanence in it. And so I feel that creatively, it's the events that happen are creative reflections of a shift taking place again. That has been there for you, with you for a while, but you still wanted it to be right. So your sense of it not only having a place for the kids in this, but it being the right place and things like that. So you're managing a remarkable thing. I don't know, that's heavy duty. You're managing all the personalities of the people. And if it becomes really creepy, then you're not in the story. So somehow your presence has kept it sane. It was moments when it could be tough. I'm talking personally, even on our circumstance here with it. There must have been a few thousand characters that have come through that are heavy duty and intense or whatever. And it's this and it's that. So it's been more of a play or a stage of interaction that when I look at it, the thread of it, it's deeply spiritual to me. But it may have been tough going through the situation here. It must have been, the house looks like it's been for 42 years, but no, it's been maybe 10 situations, 20 situations. So different to experience them, where they're literally happening one moment, and then in retrospect, you see another dimension of what was really happening, where you saw the avoidance factor or the resistance factor created a dynamic, even in a dream or a memory or whatever. and you saw the energy you were relating to. So I feel you've made a life out of that expression.
Right,
Some
but what
form
does
of-
that have to do with money?
You found a way where instantly you were okay. You found relationships. So somehow in what you were doing, there was an attraction to you in a way that took away the need for money, literally that way, but allowed you a lifestyle. And so I think that it's been a lifestyle that you've shared, which is a kind of flow or a flux that you've been free. So usually when it's relationship opens up a doorway where it becomes natural, the lifestyle that's happening there. When the feeling is lost or shifts or something happens, and I feel for you and for me and for us all, then you can't be in slavery. Something in you won't accept being a slave or won't live without the feeling. So I feel that you've had many expressions around the feeling. And when you've had that feeling, I think people have fallen in love with you. And I don't think that Spiro is a critiquer of you. I think he has deep affection for you. I think, even with those glasses. So he didn't say anything wrong, Kai. I'm opening up the question because I went to the doctor yesterday and he put this stuff in me, and I will see if we hang around much longer. But let's say a deeper spiritual reality is in the picture for us. It's your call, your expression. You're managing a life. And how much it literalizes, how much it doesn't literalize. But my feeling is that when you are dealing with the mystery and that your earnings are coming from the mystery.
That's what I was just going to say. So can't the money be a part of that mystery, the expression of the money? Because that's been what's been coming through in these live streams I've been doing, that it is just an expression of the divine.
So then I would say it depends on where you're coming from. Not so much their interpretation of where you're coming from. But somehow it's a creative expression. If you get an interpretation of where you're coming from, it's a reflection for a hey baby. Just check where you're at. You are there because you're creating and doing something. You've known that for the last few years, that it's been back and forth. But somehow it had to speak to you directly. So you understand that somehow you are dealing with an energy that's related, where you are free to go, where nothing's being violated, no trip, nothing is happening. You're free. And what you're wanting from is that if you share the house with the kids, you want it to be no trip. They're free to have a life and find out what's available to them. Okay. You would need about $15 million to pull that off. Okay.
For the lifestyle I want, at least, yes.
Okay. No, one friend will take care of it. It's not, you don't have to do, you're not the doer. The only thing is you have a relationship to a kind of truth now. The next relationship, to some degree, has to be true and of a genuine in a different way. Not from the history or neediness or anything like that. Okay. And so I feel that since I've known you, that has been your relationship is to a true thing. And then you have the story towards that. So I feel even the challenges that are coming your way, and you can't just go easily like that because somehow it has to speak to you. And I feel that that is not a flaw, that it has to speak to you. And so I think that that's how your life has been, that somehow an invitation or a feeling has opened up an expression for you. And it has been work or literal work that did that. It has been the feeling that made it normal in the situation. But I feel your presence in the normal situation is creative, not literal. And if it's disrespected entirely by it doesn't exist. So I would take a picture, a measure of saying, what did you mean by that, Spiro? Not because of that, but because you understand that if you
I don't
thought
even remember saying
please.
anything.
I don't remember saying anything either, but thanks for having not said it because it has allowed us this conversation. So please don't jump in. Please don't jump in for a moment. Okay. Thanks for being the fall guy, but you don't need to be literally the fall guy. We all know you're a decent guy with a beard and glasses who's living here and is a sweetheart. So what I say was that you just revealed in a conversation with me that you knew a Kai that I didn't know. The literal Kai, what she does in a day or whatever. Then sometimes that may come from visiting sites or seeing. So there's a world out there that I don't utilize so much. So the Kai I know now is the Kai of experience and I'm experiencing together. And so for me, that I knew that she had the expression of Shaktipat in some way, and that she would be challenged like everyone else is. Does Urja charge?
Mm-hmm. I mean, sometimes if they can't pay, I don't charge them now in my old age. Sometimes if I feel they really want the experience, I say, okay.
How much would you charge Spiro? He wouldn't believe your reading anyway, would he? Would you believe her reading? Where'd you get this hat, Spiro?
I found it.
Okay. So we've accomplished, by using you, for you, we were able to have a nice conversation.
Is it nice?
I think it's nice. You don't think it's nice? Is it not nice?
It's interesting.
Okay.
I guess we could have an interesting conversation.
No, I guess. And so let it not. I thought that there was something shared. But you see, you can't be just a device of the perception.
Oh, I'm not offended. I'm just not sure.
So your present statement, without it being literal, allowed a conversation to take place. That was normal.
It was a statement I didn't make. Also,
That's not a real hat. Is it?
No.
It looks like it's a. Can you put different clothes when you're on?
So, okay. So it then seems that the literalness of what's the problem if you made or didn't make the statement?
oh no, it doesn't.
No,
No,
please see it. No, see it. Let's say you made the statement and you made the statement, you considered that way. I'm saying you made the statement.
What was the statement I made?
I don't know, but it doesn't seem to me that there's that one has to deny it unless what's the problem? So then I say there is. Then what is it? What's the question?
I'm just trying to understand what you're
So
talking
the question was, something that you mentioned allowed me to explore something as I'm looking at the vagus nerve and a few other things. And then Shaktipat comes to my mind and the energy and comes to my mind. And so something you mentioned.
Yeah, Patabi Joyce considered the vagus nerve to be the Sushumna.
Now you're shooting.
So we studied it a lot.
But can you also, I'm asking you to be cool because I'm asking you to be kind of part of the process that you represent. So I'm not saying, so when you literalize that you said something, I say, no, your presence is creative. And if something you said, then it opens up a creative doorway. I'm not getting in your literal lives about uncles and mothers.
The literal is.
Then basically, then Kai raises a real question that was brought on by something I reflected with you, and that is earning a living in a situation that is kind of creative, where selling out has a reality to it. And so you want feedback from a friend, just like you may need feedback for a friend, where I may say, hey, your interruption is not only creative, but it's also obstructive in a way where you're possessing it. And then showing out what you know to some degree has some meaning, but only in friendship, not in blocking it. So you say, hold it, I would not block something that I feel was happening with Kai in the moment. And I say, I don't know, I feel something was happening where you, like Kai, became present for your own expression, not just assuming the naturalness of it, not just assuming the naturalness of your hat and your beard and that people love you and they'll care for you, and you have as if it's normal. But somehow there is a responsibility in that. You'll get up at 6 a.m. to meet someone. You'll do this. Why? It's only around. Yes, don't worry. It's the mountain. Do this mantra. So you've taken that expression as a kind of Shaktipat, isn't it? That somehow your life has been around a Shaktipat. And when you've had love relationships, then there has been dimensions. When those love relationships shift, then you're still in the situation.
Well, it's interesting to hear how your mind works.
But I'm talking about flowing. I'm just talking about you don't possess that. All of us have been through that. You don't own it. You have your own version of it.
There's no ownership in a comment.
So then I say each one has had their individual experience of it. One may fall in love with a Hindu princess or whatever, but then you meet the family, kicks your ass. So then I say, why? Because we're in it, but not of it. When you are giving reflection, when you are giving yoga, when you are giving acid and sharing that, you are sharing another dimension. And that other dimension takes it for granted that you're friends in some way. The shared moment, it doesn't have to literalize as friendship, but the shared moment. So I say, yeah, you can bring that dimension with your presence. So something allowed me to have a conversation. Now, is this hat real or is this hat floating?
Is it literal or is it evocative?
Nice hat. Gargling and humming stimulates the vagus nerve.
And shave
That's
that
true.
beard.
Actually,
Brahmari moved
before you dudes know so much, this old schmuck is 82 on his way out. Tell me about what you know, man. The thing to do with your vagus nerve.
Well, it's nice.
Put your hands behind your back. Cool for a moment. Put your hands behind your back.
Get on a wavelength together.
Put your face in the ice water.
That's a good.
Put your face in the ice water and keep quiet. Shut up. Put your face in the ice water.
Keep quiet.
Or put ice cubes on your chest and lay there for a few minutes. And you'll talk to your vagus nerve. Immediately you'll have a conversation.
Because the body keeps the score.
What a weird day. I'm sorry, Kai. Has it been too weird today? Are you okay? It's your call. In other words, the basic.
It's interesting, Danny, because I explore this so deeply. I mean, just within myself for years, I explore this so deeply. And like with my own spiritual practice, it's everything that I am. I mean, I go to the very depths of, you saw what I experienced 2 years ago, just exploring myself so deeply. So yes, when the word cheesy is used, it provokes a reaction like, am I not being seen?
No, cheesy wasn't ever used.
Well, that word did come out, but.
No, but I may also have the same experience. While I'm passing, if I may say to the spirit, hey, there was an article in the paper, say, oh, I saw that, I read it, I know it about. And then I say, if I ask about this, hey, I'm too busy, I can't do it. And so then I see it passing me by, but then they'll also think that they're helping me in some way, that they're hanging around because they're going to help me if I fall or something like that. But basically, everything that I may have to say is kind of stupid, old, creepy, crazy person. And so then it bugs them because they have to interrupt what they're doing, which is important work. And it may be. But then the perspective that I kind of represented, a perspective, becomes increasingly dumb, doesn't it? Because it seems then it's only 1 second. You have a relationship with me, I have a relationship with you. If it's cool with you, it's cool with me. It's that pure. That's your call, how you work it out. I say, if you ever get in a jam in a way that's too much over your head, you know that in some way, and I'll always try to be here for you if I'm still alive, or the scene will be, so that you can reconnect yourself and recreate yourself. So the persona that you have now is caring for something. That doesn't have to be your persona forever. It is creatively your mommy in this role. The film that you're in is your mommy. It doesn't mean that mommy doesn't have a life, doesn't have a being, has a whole dimension. That is the movie and the film that you're in. That it has all those dimensions while you're still mommy. And that means that you're caring for something, and it's not literalized, but you know it will be in the memory somehow that you're sharing with the kids. It's in the framework. So it's your creative call. And then money in relationship to that, if it means personal freedom for you, where it's not so dominated by the scene that you're in, then you still have to be with that. It's not, you can make an arrangement in a circumstance. Meaning what? It may be that there's a need for a wholehearted conversation in the circumstance you're in. And money is included in it. Because without it being perceived, the earner of the money becomes the owner of the money.
Mm.
When they couldn't have earned the money unless they were in the situation they were in. Okay, so the earner of the money also becomes the sharer when the affection is fully there. But when the affection starts to shift, the maker of the money owns it literally. You'll always have to measure what level of creative respect there is for you, just like I would have to. In other words, in my absenteeism, in my fading away, then I'm met with cool guys who know a lot of shit. So if I say something about looking at the vagus nerve, he'll tell me everything about the vagus nerve and what he knows and who he knows, the guy, the doctor. And I say, I ain't saying that. I'm just saying something stupid. The vagus nerve seems to represent something that Kaya's doing. Okay. And they say, oh, but you don't know my doctor friend in New Jersey. And I say, oh, cool. I'll catch you later, man. I'm just on this thing. But he's probably right. I don't literally know it. I do know when I experience it, that you experience what you call so-called spiritual and literal at the same time, simultaneously. And I think when I'm going to the literal doctor, I'm protecting the spiritual and the literal. You understand? Where there's a guy who's looking at you literally, and you are kind of caring for some human element in yourself. And you're measuring how far to get involved in it. So you see this a similar measure to money, how far to literalize the question where the cancer is you. And so there, the treatment is you. And you say, no, I'm a being who happens to have cancer, not cancer who happens to have a life. So basically seeing it from the perspective of here, of a life lived, I don't see it as an enemy. There may be enemy moments when it's ferocious, but basically you see a kind of conversation about living and dying happening. And I think when you start to see the conversation of living and dying, they become part of your intuition, part of your sense of life. So I feel that those elements of Shaktipat and things like that are kind of glimpses of living and dying. And that somehow, when people perceive the living and dying process, they are no longer so related to, so fixed on the length of time as the depth of time. Meaning that those persons who see won't sacrifice the depth of time for the length of time, which most of the population will. So I feel that once the life is revealed as a creative expression, not only a literal one, then the creative expression comes from a different place, and time and space are different. And I feel that there is a processing going on in our being, in our bodies, that are processing these remarkable systems as normal. And there's still to be discovered what is happening and what it is in the future, while it's happening in the present. The discovery in the present brings on, I feel, the discovery brings on an integrity in the life that is not the literal integrity of a job, it's the integrity of a being. Where you come from a human space, you can't literalize it to the extent that you will violate the human. In other words, what would have happened to you in the past life when you ran into something that you couldn't do, not because you couldn't do it, but something in you resisted. In retrospect, you see that you ran into a human. In my mind, you ran into a human. And that was punished, and that was laughed at and jerked at and this and that. But you also understand that there was inherently a voice in the circumstance. And you can go into it for the adventure, but you couldn't literalize it. Because when you literalize it, you lost the adventure. Somehow your life was an adventure. Somehow your life was a journey. And anytime it literalized, it kind of literalizes into a kind of slavery.
Mm.
So somehow there's a thread of authenticity running through the story. And somehow, no matter how the relationships that we have waiting for us somehow have to have a genuineness to it. No trip, where it doesn't need, hey, haven't I met you someplace before, or something like that. But that somehow it's just naturally there. Well, this has been a stream of consciousness conversation. Are you okay, Spiro? Or is he there? Man. Well, the berries and are you okay, Kai? Should we,
Will cause much reflection, I'm sure.
yeah. But again, there was nothing wrong. So it may have been my introduction to see something. So that's all it was about. It wasn't,
I just can't, I have a habit of guilt tripping myself about allowing myself to have money for my work. And I don't want to go there again because I'm finally allowing it to be okay. So I don't want to go into that guilt trip state again because I want to allow
let's say you have a conversation with guilt and you say, what does it want? So let's say it's not your enemy, but that guilt is a device to look at something. Because you are in a touchy situation. Okay. And when there is a dependency on money, it's a touchy situation. So let's say we don't need the guilt any longer, but we do need to know sometimes something that's happening, And so let's say the guilt says a reflection on something. And so let's say you're coming from, hey, baby, meaning that the guilt and the fears are not elements of enemies, but they are, in fact, reflections for you to see what's happening, that something may be imbalanced, something needs to be looked at. Maybe there's a need for a kind of conversation now. So let's say the feelings you have are creative. They're not punishing. You are not, if you wanted to get out there tomorrow, you could. If you needed cash tomorrow in this way or that, it could happen. So it's not, you're wanting to come from a real place and a real situation. So it is not that you are a prisoner in that place. You are there because something has happened.
No, I'm not a prisoner, but there's my son and I talk about the beauty of life that's available that we're not living all the time.
And that's not literal because most of the population is not living what you're talking about. So then it's few who have the vision.
We're not most of the population.
No, you're not. So you're coming at it from a different way. And you see that he has seen enough to want a life. And it's a free life, the presumption of a free life. He's not thinking of getting a job in Pennsylvania in the mines or literally. He is thinking of a creative life. He's experiencing a creative life now. You're providing that. And it's normal, but it ain't normal. It's remarkable. You've provided a space for the kids to be. And they're starting now to want to be out in the world. And he's letting you know that.
And they need privacy in their home. I mean, that's just a reality.
To do privacy to be.
To have, yeah, they need their own spaces in our home, in a home.
So you see that need? Are they agreeing that that's the need for you? Everyone's had that conversation together?
Well, the kids and I have.
No,
Rod
okay.
sometimes, Rod not. I don't know. Rod's not always involved in the conversations. Sometimes he
But
is.
he's major figure in it.
What?
He would be a major figure.
At the moment he would, but if I had my own money flow, he wouldn't.
I understand. So let's say I'm putting myself in the situation. And I think that other things are happening, aren't they?
Well, I thought so until this conversation started.
No.
Because I just started putting myself back out there to do group sessions and things like that, just literally this week. And then this came up. So I don't know.
I don't know what came up, to tell you the truth. We wanted to free poor Spiro because he really didn't say anything or do anything. It was more something for me. But what came up, I think, was a kind of seeing what we're doing. Seeing what you're doing and kind of doing nothing, but seeing what you're doing. So I feel that that moment will come where there's a reflection in what you're doing.
Well, hopefully that moment is now.
Okay, so then the question that you were raising, and you say that you have been struggling with how to earn money and not doing this and keeping it together, and I don't, but the stress was not an enemy. The stress was kind of your creative balancing act of that there are elements in you that you don't want to sell out. So selling out doesn't mean making $1. It means that you have to suppress something about yourself in order to do that.
Okay.
That you have to lie or you have to hide. Okay. And you,
Okay.
so we may do that as a joke. We may do that for 5 minutes. We may do that as a movie, but you don't want to live that life where you are expressing the energy and somehow you're scared shit about the money in the duality. So it's not to make it go away, but it is to recognize when the fear comes your way, that it is part of your journey. So what it means to the rest of the population is different when the money need is there. When it comes to you, it's also coming to you from the life that you live, not a worker, not someone who works in the mine or had a literal situation like that. It comes to you because it interrupts the flow. And so the flow is somehow your relationship, that somehow there's a freedom where the kids are free to grow up. You're free, but you also live in a literal world where earning a living, this and that is part of it. But we haven't had that kind of life. Our life has been more of a creative expression. So we've made music, we've done this, we've done that, we've done things that are more creative. And sometimes relationships open up a doorway creatively, where, as I say, money frees you from the money world. And the money world is the majority of the population is organized into this continuum around money and the separation of people around it.
I think my perspective lately that there's money as it is in that perceived world, but then there's money as it is as a divine energetic flow. So I think the word money can be seen in on either side of that spectrum. And I'm trying to be in the divine flow side of that money word.
Right. And so that's what you're talking about is when, is it okay then to make money? And I say, you know the answer to that. It depends on how you literalize the situation. You've made money, not literal money like in a chunk, but are you desiring $2.5 million stash?
No, I just want an unlimited flow. I don't want a stash. I just want an unlimited flow.
What do you think of that now, Spiro?
If you figure that one out, please give me your footnote.
Where's your picture? What outfit are you wearing now? That's the old outfit.
Same outfit.
Now this hat thing I still don't get. What is that then? That's Alfred's hat?
That's the hat for the device. They have these things you can do to entertain yourself.
Oh, wasn't this an indicator of What do you say, Alfred? Doesn't aren't these indicating of some bowel problem? That's a bowel problem mask, isn't it? I hope we weren't too weird today. Are you okay, Kai? I'm saying something to me. Okay doesn't mean making something nice or something. I think it's a heavy duty. A question is raised, and you raised a heavy duty question. The only thing is, I don't see it's anyone critiquing you in that way, but a question then comes to you that you have that question also about making money. And you also have so basically, I think that money as an aspect of what you're doing, but when it literalizes, when the reason you're doing something is the money, that's the way of the world. But we also see when the reason is to make the money, it starts to diminish other capacities that need to be released somehow. So somehow maybe the creative act needs some security so it can be free to create and not have to think about the literal survival as its main objective. So this is the question that we're running into between the creative expression and the survival dominance. So when the survival dominance is there, continuity is its primary effect. So survival, it lays on. When in fact you come from the creative place, giving into the survival impulse, you can make a joke of the survival impulse. You can open it up and show it from different dimensions, but you can't be ruled by it. But ruled by it is the way of the world around you. But those people who have navigated around the ruling of it have found ways to make billions and millions or whatever by one act or an accident or a situation like that, that frees them from the concept. So when I mentioned that we came from I remember our period that we didn't grow up thinking of getting jobs and hoping to get jobs or do this or that. In fact, not getting jobs was more our concern. To live a life that was kind of free to explore, to try things, to go places, to fall in love. To fall in love was the kind of biggest challenge at the time or whatever. And it was happening in those 60s and early 70s, it seemed naturally. And togethers and so it did seem to me a whole lifestyle came out of that normalized and then literalizes. But it in fact was a creative act. And in fact, most of our life, I feel, is a creative sharing. So I feel that the making of the money is qualitatively different, that it comes to you creatively, that allows you some freedom. So I feel that money is the freedom from having to think where it's fear dominated. And you see that no matter what level these guys are on, they can have 100 billion, 200 billion, and they still live in a kind of fear, fight, conflict circumstance.
That's why I don't want to stash. I just want to flow.
Yeah, where you see the flow is, in fact, the creative life is the flow. Because there's, why? Because you don't want it to literalize as a fact. Even the house has been for 42 years, but it's always been in flux. And flux meaning that you don't want it, if the people no longer like each other, then you have a fixed house. Okay. So somehow there's a hey baby moment where you say into it. Now somehow what you're experiencing yourself or what was just raised there may be something where you need some conversation in the scene, in the situation again. And what would conversation be? If we were in the room together, everyone. So somehow it would not be that you had to do this and you had to say something, but it would somehow be a no bullshit situation, no lying, no trips. It's just there, and yet, okay. So could you imagine everyone coming from a similar space without being forced into it, without the courts ordering you into it? And I say it has a similarity to being in a film together or sharing a creative space together, where somehow you are on board. You were sharing a similar experience. And in the shared experience, everyone saw the origins of the experience, saw the beginning of it. So I feel that I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings there, Spirit, but I kind of used Spirit to see something and to create a mood because I was intrigued by the vagus nerve. But I hope it's helpful for you then, Kai. I'm here and I feel we share something deeply. If not a prisoner of the story, the feelings that you have in relationship to it are real aspects of an artwork. You have put something together. You're hanging with something and being with something. The authenticity of it is your call. How to measure both worlds is happening often. Even if you see these shows on TV, some of them, you see the people who are doctors then come home to a world, like I just described, a doctor then comes from the emergency room, then comes home to a world of 3 kids and tries to spare them what he's just seen and kind of ease everything. And, you know, and so then you see many people living lives like that now in the circumstance around it where they're experiencing personally a real challenge. And yet the face that they have for the world is something else with, okay. So that dual, but they share that personal experience because that personal experience has a creative dimension to it, which is not co-opted by the literal world. One is keeping what you would call a creative or a spiritual dimension alive in their life. And when it speaks to you, it gives you a life to some extent. You are caring for the energy.
I do feel that I truly am.
And so you have your own expression in the situations you're in. And you see, from my perspective, you love those babies.
And I love all the people that I'm exchanging with in my work.
So then the system so then that's an agreement that you're having with the people between you. So you can raise the money question if necessary, or it can be clear. They must all recognize a need for money flow.
Yeah.
So people contributing, it's not a gun to their head or whatever, it's more friendship.
Yeah.
You would like the flow to come out of a kind of friendship where there's a shared feeling, and then there's the money. You'd like it.
I don't think they'd come to me otherwise, honestly, the
Okay.
people that I attract.
No, I say if you literally had a job, it was literally your job like that, then it would be kind of dumb. So that would be true. If in Shakti Pot was your job and you sell Shakti Pot, and they said, come on, stop that. So somehow there's a shared experience or feeling, and then it's a shared circumstance. So it's not that if someone is homeless, you're not going to charge them. Someone is. So it's not a question of charging. They'll naturally, at a friendly feeling, share. When that's not happening, and it's not happening much in much of the society now, it's up in the air. But when it's not happening, and there's also shifts, but basically your presence and your integrity have been the source of your flow of income. And if somehow you get a message of a whole, it's become a job or a literal job or something like that, and they say, what's the difference? I say, well, the religious feeling is different than the religion. The religion has a motive of continuing, so it owns the story. The religious feeling doesn't own the story, it shares. It's more in friendship that it shares dimensions. So I feel that it's an honest question raised for all of us who are somehow surviving in this world, where you see that there's a literal social factor and none of us are really in it. We're in it, but we're not of it. We found our own way. And we found our way where somehow we haven't had to be crooks and rats and killers and do all that other stuff. But we've somehow found a way to live where we even haven't had to compete to live, but it's our thing that we've created. So is that okay? Is thing still there? No. Well, Mary's still there. Is it okay? What do you say, Arisha?
Yeah.
Kai, are you okay?
Yes.
Or should we carry on with this tomorrow? What do you say?
It's a big subject.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty deep.
Should we keep this medium? What do you say, Spiro? Eh. What do you say? You find it interesting? That's a hard question, isn't it? Hmm? But you're saying if the reason for the inquiry is false, in other words, if a statement was used to open up a door and you say, oh, that statement was never said. Hmm?
I think it has a sweet effect, the whole prospect.
The
And it
prospect
can
is,
be
no, let me introduce you.
revelatory.
You're sharing a technical space, the computer world, the technology world, which I'm not literally sharing that way. Then with a simple click, you can discover what each other is doing.
You
Well, hold on,
look
can
at their
you-
website, but you don't know what they're
But
doing.
before,
It's
don't
like
let
Robert
hold
Irwin's like seeing
I'm
is
talking,
forgetting
but I'm
the
not
name of the
talking
thing
about
being
you. I'm
seen.
talking about my experience of you. So then basically all of you then sometimes reveal to me a whole thing that's happening that I literally don't know. So when you reveal a page to me or a circumstance to me, there's a Kai that I don't literally know. The Kai I know is the Kai I share soulfully with. How it translates in the world. But then if you go on the computer, you can see how folks are doing. So then what I can do in the friendship is illuminate if people are into it. So the issues that are presented to me are kind of illuminated as to what's happening. Not literally what's happening. You can describe what's literally what's happening. Everyone knows what's going on, who's making a buck, but what's happening in between us is to see deeply what is taking place, is to see. And so when you see that knowing, so if I say, I see something that you're doing and it affected me, and it affected me in a way that I started to reflect on it. So then you see that there is a dialogue that's going on between us that we share. And it's a creative one. And somehow it's normally intimate. Like all of a sudden we know each other so deeply, like this and that. So to me, you raised the question. And I don't know what the literalness of that was. And the question was to see what we were doing, to shed light on what we were doing, and to shed light on some of the questions that are coming our way. And one of the questions that came away is making a buck. And we see that in our lives, that has been a challenge. Because to some degree, in the literal world, making a buck kind of, if we had a vision for a creative life, the literalization as a job. But you see, even if we took a job, there was still a looking for something. There was still a creative process happening. It wasn't literally a job. I feel that there is moments when you reflect and you see that life itself is a creative process, not owned by the ego or the history. When you perceive it, I think that you change the history to the mystery. And when I think that the mystery is there, then love, relationships, accidents become more of the creative expression. And so any attempt to normalize the creative expression into literalness will usually be clunky. So somehow the love affair earns a living. But if in fact you find out that earning a living is a measure that's being laid on you because you already have a stash, then if in fact you're going to literally, it's not longer earning to survive, it's earning to create. So what we have done then is you've changed the survival mechanism in relationship to the flow of income. You've created money to be just like any other energy. You see there's a flow that you're talking about. When it literalizes, you run into a clunky situation. But when it literalizes, it's as if, again, you're in the service and you have to kill someone. And it was all a movie to you until you get to that moment. And then you see you run into yourself. And you see that you had a movie and you had a play in your life and you did this, but then once you ran into the literalization, you could not be part of it. Somehow, even though you had to make believe that you were part of it, you had to hide that you were a free human being. And that would be considered a flaw, but in retrospect, you see, because you couldn't join the group, you couldn't join the literalness when it became absurd or killer. You see, it wasn't a flaw at all. There was a protective element that was happening in the life. You discover the life is a creative expression. When it literalizes, it becomes a prison for you. Because we're human who happen to be white, human who happen to be black, whatever definitions they have, human who happen to be this or that. But the human, you have the human experience and then you enter into the expression, where you're no longer controlled by the history. You have a relationship to what you thought was a mystery. The life is freed from the story. You re-enter the story from a different place. And when you do, you teach yoga. When you do, you give readings. When you do, you have Shaktipat. What does that mean? It means that whatever the circumstance, Shaktipat is not a moneymaker. It's around trust. Once it starts to see motive in it or like that, it starts to, so somehow the trust is there and then you accept the form. The feeling is there and then there's an acceptance of the form. So if one runs into a question that is relevant to the creative thing, where you may have a, hey baby, I've really run into a challenging question now in the teaching, this is happening. I feel that you're in a creative space that the money coming to has been coming to magically, not literally. And I feel that the amounts that you may need are available, but not literally hanging out available. They're coming out of the feelings that you have.
Danny, I hate to cut this off, but I need to go make dinner for Tico.
Okay, that's good.
So
That's great. I'll catch you then.
you guys can stay on
Okay.
if you like.
Maybe I'll see you Sunday. Is that how you feeling okay? No, I'd like you to leave the space really cool.
No, I am. It's just, I'm not gonna lie. This is a subject that's really deep and intense for me. So it's gonna bring stuff up.
I think it's a subject that's for all of us. So I think you're revealing a subject that we're all kind of dealing with. I mean, everyone here is attempting to earn a living. Everyone is kind of caring for people. And so I think that you are reflecting what is happening. So basically, even if I utilize Spiro as a kind of reflection on something that's happening for you, that's happening for him also. He's living in that world. He's living in a yogic world where he's got his own, he's advising and caring for people and doing that, and they trust in him and they're sharing with him. So basically, I would say it's not earning money, it's sharing. And when you have people who have that affection with you, they share. Now, it may be literal that he needs a car, so they may share a car with him where it literalizes, but it's a shared feeling. So when someone needs something in the situation, it becomes a kind of commonality. I feel that there's real similarities in what everyone is doing. And if it becomes, if he got too much of a car or he had to fight for it, then I say, oh, you're going too far. Because they're giving to you out of affection for you, out of love for you, out of respect for you. And I think, namaste, I'll catch you. Come on Sunday if you can. Okay, I'll see you later. Okay, bye. Oh, you're leaving too, Spiro. What is this hat thing that you put on?
Yeah, what is that hot thing?
Yes, what is that? Sting speaks.
Come on, you guys all wear hats. I can wear a hat.
That's not a hat.
He's not saying you're wearing a hat. He says, what is that hat thing?
No, it's an emptiness. It's a sort of cap for the void, the non-dual void.
Okay, so Sting, you think wearing that hat, having that beard, wearing those glasses, and having that T-shirt that says Psychic 2 is normal?
What does that mean?
No,
psychic
it's not.
too?
Or do you think this is not a steal?
TV, psychic TV.
TV.
Do you
Psychic
think this
It
is not a
is.
steal the show act that we got going here? Sting?
It's
what do you
more a
think?
sidekick act.
Well, a floating hat with a beard and glasses, the three things. Either one of them is cool. Two of them is questionable. Three of them with glasses
It
that
is
are
a match.
irradiated. And it seems to me you have a motive. Wouldn't that be obvious, Derek, that there is a motive? What is your
Yeah.
motive? Oh, I don't mean that.
What is the motive? What does the
What could the motive be?
what does the jury rule in as a motive?
That's a
You're trying to get money
capitalist
out. You're
hat.
trying to get money from Sting.
It's definitely capitalism at work.
Mother jumper, I would call it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not fully a mother, but a mother jumper, I would say. Well, that was a very weird afternoon. Would you see, Derek?
Pretty good.
Hmm?
Pretty good.
So
I mean, it could be worse.
It's a real question. It really, that's definitely
what's that?
the flow of money question and how to not give in to your survival urge and.
Oh, no, it was a real question. And all these mother jumpers are going to act cool
Hmm.
while they're scheming their asses off. But verily I say unto you, if a man has two sheep,
Relentless.
Hmm?
Kind
What
of
is that?
relentless.
I say money, money, money makes the world go down and up.
Money.
Hmm?
The Pink Floyd. They had a great song on money.
No, it's probably correct. It's probably correct. Let's say Bitcoin is what we have now in our lives and having things and stuff like that you can sell or whatever. So there is a kind of Bitcoin in your life and you see that there is parallel. How you doing? I think okay. So you see that you are out in the world where what's literalized as money when you need it. When you don't need it in the same way, then money has more of a creative flow. You see that what they're doing in China and what they're doing and how they're selling this and how much they're offering this for. So you see another world than work, where you see that people invest themselves in knowing something that the rest of the population doesn't easily know. And then they become advisors, literal advisors, and manage the thing. And in fact, create the thing they're advising about. So somehow you're fixed into the circumstance because the advisor has a motive of continuity. But when you discover the underlying premises, you start to see a scheme at play. That somehow the banks and the this and that are not promoting creativity, they're promoting. You see the secret money, you see the hidden money, you see the hidden contracts, you see this fine print. And you see then how the average citizen is locked into a continuum. And it's not only around their physical health, but you also have an outer structure of survival around you that normalizes. So it normalizes that you should be scared shit and die and maybe even create suicide if you don't have the money. That it does have that it becomes that it has a power that runs through it. It's in your sleep, it's in your dreams, it's in your moves. And then you can see when the person will have a quandary with it because their creative persona doesn't allow them to literally charge like that without dumbing down the situation for them. And yet there is that need or that want. I just saw a face in the berries. Is that an illusion or an experience? So I say, of course, but what would we like is that somehow one is still kept a human element in the need to earn the money, where it's not so much needy that it's still manageable. And I say, why? And I say, well, what was it called? What did you call it before, Spiro? Rat mother, what was it? Rat bastard or something like that. So there is rat bastard waiting in the money pursuit, isn't there?
Well,
bastard meaning
there's
rat
some dub songs about the topic.
Well, rat bastard meaning my survival is more important than anything around it. And so in order to do that, I think there's a surrender of quite a few hundred nerve endings that connect you to the world, because you don't want the connection to the world that way any longer. You want there to be enough of a focus for you that the world is just fools.
Yeah.
And somehow that foolishness will pay off for you. That a collection of 7.5 billion are so stupid that maybe 300,000 can really groove with it. It may be that one finds a creative way of living, but somehow one still has a relationship to the humanity of it all. So incidents are waiting, no matter what form you're in or situation you're in, that will cause deep reflection. I felt that in what I was discussing with you, Spiro, and introducing here before, it was kind of causing a reflection on something that's happening anyway, and trying to figure out what to do and not to do. And I felt that we introduced reflection into the story, where the doer was secondary, not the owner of the story. The doer will be advised what to do once the perception is there, once the feeling is there. But the doer doesn't own the story now with its history of repetition, called survival. So the threat to the repetition is not such a threat. It is in fact a creative challenge that causes some soul searching or reflection. To the knower, the one who knows, is then caused to reflect, where knowing is only an aspect of the story. I feel we're in that, and I feel that we shared some element of that. Now, maybe it's not literally that, but I do feel that we shared the flux of a story, and this question of money comes to each of us in a way. Now, some of us who shared a deeper experience have a relationship where, holy shit, we're working with a new philosophy called holy shit there, Alfred. What do you think? You want to give it a try? Oh, Alfred realized he was seen. Come on, Alfred. Don't do the berries on me today, man. We're talking about the vagus nerve, bro. Okay. No, Alfred. Well, Spiro is still smiling. Is that still Spiro, or is that not Spiro anymore? He's gone?
It's a good photo. It's a good photo of him.
Oh, Spiro. What do you think, Derek? Was too weird a conversation?
No,
Never too.
pretty good.
Any other folks out there that were on? We don't know. Kai left. Yeah. Can you see any other folks that are not on that have joined us?
I might be able to look. Hang on, real quick.
Hey, Danny.
Hey. Are you okay?
I don't care that much for money because money can't buy me love.
No, it can. I heard that you were working with that. I heard you were working with that. There's some Indian mantras you can do, but the mantras will cost you 5,000 each. And then I heard just like a Ute first phase blanket will cost you $1.5 million, because in those blue and black and white stripes, there's a meaning when you wear it. Walk-in beauty, they call it.
I'll buy it with Bitcoin.
The original blankets were called Walk-in Beauty. There was a wonderful book. We knew her. She lived here in town and had a show of textiles. But she called it Walk-in Beauty was the name of her shop. And that was what they called in the original blankets before money came into the picture, was that each person, through the blanket that they wore, could tell who they were and where they were. And there was a story being told. in the movement. So I found that attractive. And then,
Beauty above me, beauty below me, beauty around me, the Navajo.
but then that question was raised that we just raised today, that I saw this little thing, a 5-minute thing on PBS, and it was around the Navajo blanket, and they had a blanket that had mixed metaphor in it, that had magical symbols, but it was a violation of the feeling, so they said, look, there was a period of time when it was made for white people, but there were some times when mystics would get together and make their own, so they had freedom to change the images and symbols from the literal, if they were considered holy enough. But then there was a period where they were living in poverty, and they had to then make stuff for the tourists. And so then they started to make what the tourists wanted. So that happens in most of the creative acts that we've seen. In time, it starts to have a different reason, and making a buck became the reason. Where before that, the buck didn't exist. So this buck is an interesting thing. I've had a lot of entities around the buck.
The difference between pine nuts and deer nuts. One's $1.35, the other's under $1.
$1 can't buy you love, you say.
Well, deer nuts and beer nuts.
I say, okay, man, next Thursday, something's coming into your life. I just had experience. I just had a pine nut. You know what a pine nut is? You
Yeah,
put
they
a
go in
pin-
Castro.
No, you put a pinon in one hand and a pinon in the other hand, and you have a difference of a pinon. You understand that one? So if you put a berry in one hand and a berry in the other hand, you'll have a difference of a berry also. So let's say once you individualize them, they have very strong opinions. So once they feel for each other, they forget their opinions, and there's a melting or convergence. So I would say that the exploration using this or that is more towards sensuality than sexuality.
Yeah.
That basically, man, what are you going to do? It's a soulmate for you and nothing. And so you ain't going to be able to buy. It has to be true now. Is that okay? And true, again, that's not George Washington, but kind of, there's a moment when it starts, where there's a hey baby, and it starts from that conversation. Then the history is not an intrusive, it's a mystery. Is that okay, Alfred? Or Sting? Oh, I feel that our situations kind of reflect each other. And it is this fluid life that we've lived, which is only, it has one aspect of the entity or the identity. The identity is a vehicle for a happening. I feel that there's a moment where you realize that the experience is in fact the thing, and that you kind of understood what you were going to run into, but you needed to have the experience when it literalized. When the people share a feeling, but then it goes into a circumstance where it literalizes, and in literalizing it has to dumb down the situation, because you can only impersonate a citizen for a few hours before they capture you. So you can do a human being who happens to be a citizen, but is not defined by this literalness of survival or continuity. The measure of the love is the measure, not the future of this and that, which is normally the literalness of the story. It's the depth of it, the feeling of it, the general. So that it sends you to outer space has a kind of genuineness to it also. There's nothing like success or failure in the feeling when love is in the story. So the loss of it has profound elements in it, over nothing that anyone could have told you, that you could have seen from the get-go. But somehow you went into the experience, no matter what grabbed you, what advised you, what told you to do. There was something in the experience that you were there for. And so I feel that it was the experience itself. and I feel that the memory of it lives on. The memory becomes more the life. In the absence, you have more existence than in the present. So I feel your effect lives on. And that's what's meaning when the person remembers you or reflects on you. You see it's not a possessive. When it's reflective, the non-possessive opens up other dimensions that were hidden there. And when you're sharing that, the other person in their own way is having their own experiences of that also. So I feel our relationships are not determined by time and space, but accidents reveal another dimension, or there's a hey baby moment waiting when the story falls away. And there's this dumb as hey baby, just a recognition. Okay. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank
Take
you.
care.
See you, Derek. See you tomorrow.
Thanks, Danny. See you tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye.
See you guys.
Hello? Is anyone else here?
I can hear you. Just so you.
I'm gonna go check in with Danny. All right. I hope Kai's okay.
Oh,
All
yes.
right. See you, Alfred. See you, Mary. See you, Urza.
Okay. Bye-bye.